Hi, today we're working on the Sister's Choice block for our project Blue Star. Join us as we get started on this block. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, how are you today? It's very warm where I am, but we're going to try to get started on the Sister's Choice block, and I think we're going to take this in two parts. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on this center strip here. I think in the other videos we pretty much have it together, but I want to just quickly review that with you, and then we're going to work on this middle strip. So let me get my pieces of fabric in order and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are, we're working on this Sister's Choice block. It is a very complicated block because there are 24 squares that are incorporated to create this block. But what we're going to focus on first is the first 5, and those are the 5 that run the center of the block. There's a blue block, a white block, a blue block, a white block, and a blue block. And in some of the other videos, I gave you a little glimpse at how we were making strips. And I thought I had a part of the 5 strip, but I'll show you the 3 strip. This is what we did. We sewed long strips of fabric. We alternated the colors. And for this part, oh, there it is right there. And for this part we're working on, it's 5. 2 blues on the or 1 blue on each outside, 1 blue in the middle, and 2 white ones. It's a long strip, about 42, 43 inches, depending on the width of your fabric. And then we took those and we used a ruler to cut it across the strips like this to create their own little strips, just like this. They're 3 inches wide, and then this way each square started out, or each strip started out as 3 inches. And to make the quilt top that we're talking about, you're going to need, let me do my math, 13 of these squares. So you're going to need 13 of these. Now, a couple of the things we talked about as important parts is to make sure that you have a consistent seam width. And on these we used 1/4 inch, and I was able to set my machine on a 1/4 inch and use a 1/4 inch foot. And here's that foot. It's got the place where the needle goes in to make the stitch, and then the little opening here. And then on one side, that would be the right side of towards the body of the machine, it has a little guide, so you can just run your fabric right along that guide with your machine set, and you've got a perfect 1/4 inch seam. So we've done that. We've cut these into strips. We've got them ready. So that first strip on our block is done, and we're going to just set those aside, and the next thing we're going to work on is what I'm going to call the middle strip. That little piece of cardboard is a little thicker. You know what we'll do? We'll just slide it all over. The next one we're working on is this strip. And it still wants to fall off on me. Whoops. One day I'm going to come up with a way that this works really well. There we go. Now, on this strip, we've got a blue, a white, and a blue in the center. And you're going to make those exactly the same way you made the 5 strip. Only this time it's going to be 3 strips of fabric. Width of the fabric long, sewn together with 1/2 inch seams, excuse me, I misspoke, 1/4 inch seams, and then cut perpendicular into 3-inch strips. And that is going to be the center of that next strip. And for this project, you're going to need 13 of this one, and then you're going to need 26 of these because there's 2 of these in each block. Now, I don't think I have quite 26 made, but I've got a bunch. So we're just going to set those aside. Now, the other component of this strip is a 1/2 square triangle, and it looks like this. And for this strip, we have one that sits like this, and then we have one that sits like this. And when you hook those together and flip them over, you get the strip that sits over here. What we're going to do is we're going to take one of these strips with the 3 pieces, and onto that we're going to pin or clip, and I think for this demonstration I'm going to pin them. And I'm going to pin them right now in a way that you can see how they come together. And there you go. That's what that strip is going to look like. Exactly the way our illustration is done, only with fabric. So once you get these positioned correctly on each 3 strip, you're going to have one of the 1/2 square triangles on each end. Now, this is where I find this to be very, very helpful, because you have to be consistent with this to make it work. And the goal of doing this quilt top the way we're talking about is so that we can do it with some speed and accuracy, so we can get it together more quickly than if you were working with individual pieces of fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set aside 6 of these because I'm demonstrating 3 squares. You don't necessarily need to sit here and watch me put together the whole quilt top, but I think 1 is not enough to be able to catch everything you need to catch. So we're going to just go with that for right now. And by doing multiples at the same time, you can look at one and the other and quickly, and I do mean quickly, figure out what is the right way to put it together. So I'm putting together 3 and then 3. Now on these 1/2 square triangles, we covered that in a different video. So I would encourage you, if you've not seen that, to make sure to go look at that. And a couple of things when putting those together that I wanted to re-emphasize is that you want to make sure that your lines are appropriately sewn, that you're cutting where you should be, and that you're careful to line up those lines, especially when you're cutting. Because I was doing some more last night and I got a little overconfident and cut without marking, and the fabric moved on me and I didn't realize it had moved until after I cut. Fortunately, it was only just a little bit, and that's something that we can manage. But if it cuts very much, you're going to have to redo it, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing this the way we're doing it. So let me tidy up just a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and run these through the machine. Here I've got all 6 of these, and it is really easy to get turned around with these, because you look at them and they begin to kind of all look alike. And I'm short one. I thought I had them all. Or maybe I did and it just walked off the table. No, I don't see it down there. Okay, give me just a second to set up my machine. I need to swap out feet and I'll be right back. My machine is on. I've got all white thread both in the top spool and the bobbin. My machine is set to the 1/4 inch seam, and it is on a stitch length of 2.6, which is kind of a middle, maybe a little bit smaller than the middle size seam. And we're going to get started. And the way that we make this go really fast is that we chain sew them. And how I'm going to make that happen is I'm going to reposition these a bit, and I'm going to sew the right side on, and that could be either side just depending on how you have yours positioned. But the left side I am going to pin just so it doesn't walk away from the piece and then we have to reposition. We've already checked our board. We know how it should go. We don't want to have to figure that out again. So on these, if you feel like you need a pin, please feel free to do that. I think it will hinder you a little bit in getting started because that pin may grab a hold of your foot, but you have to sew the way that you're comfortable with and something that meets your skill level. I'm going to just hold these in position. They have been carefully trimmed so that they are exactly the size they need to be. And we're just going to move on from here. So there's one, and then we're going to put the next one right in there. We're making sure that the edges are lined up. We're going to make sure that that seam allowance from that half square triangle stays folded in the direction we want it to. We don't want it sitting up on us. Now, here's something I just noticed. Because it's one that doesn't look like the other. This one has had its seam allowance ironed to the wrong side. So we're going to just put that away and grab another one and swap it out quickly. It's one benefit of doing a bunch of them at the same time. You can quickly see where, whoops, and I've already done it. I'm talking to you and not paying attention to what I'm doing and position that one incorrectly. So those are the ones we've sewn together. Oops. And this one. Okay. So this one, when I put it down, I sewed it down. And I think I see what the problem is. The problem is I've got a batch of half square triangles that are pressed incorrectly, and that's what's causing us the problem. Here we go. And those haven't been trimmed. Okay. Okay, sorry, we're back. Apparently in my tired state last night, I pressed some incorrectly. It may have been that they were pressed the other day and I just didn't realize them. But we have enough, and it's going to be fine. So we're just moving on. Okay, 1/2 of these little half square triangles sewn on, and you could choose to leave them chained together or you can take them apart. That's totally up to you. When I was working on the half square triangles last night, I left them attached, and it was a little more of a headache than I anticipated because the seams were going in every direction. Now this side, when you sew it on and you get to the seam where the blue and the white match, the white has been pressed up towards where you're sewing. So we are going to have to watch that and keep it in place. I've just got one pin in them, so sometimes they do want to rotate around a little bit. And now's the time to fix it before it goes in the machine. And the last one. Now, once you do your first block, your sample block, and you're comfortable with it, and you're running through this, and this is working well for you, and you're on a roll, I would encourage you just to go ahead and do all of them, because you know what's coming next, and it's speedier to do it all at one time. For our purposes, it gets a little long in the video, so that is not necessarily the best way. Okay, so here we go. I guess this is as good as an example as we have. Here we go. Now they're not pressed, so I'm going to pull it just a little bit so you have a vision of what it's going to look like when it's pressed. A couple of things. This diagonal seam here does not come to the edge of the fabric. That's good. That's the way we want it. Because remember, we've got to go back and sew here. So when we sew that 1/4 inch seam, we will get it right at the edge. So if you don't have that, that's a problem. If it matches up, see how we've got a little gap here where we've got the white at the edge of the blue? If you have a situation where the blue comes all the way to the edge, that's where you may want to look and see how much room you have and if you need to adjust it. And if you need to adjust it, just go in and take your stitches out, move it just a little bit and sew it back. Most of these look fine. Just take a quick quick look. That one needs to be trimmed a little bit. But other than that, they look pretty good. Now we've got, where do they go? I want you to think about our block. We've got the center block, and we have 2 of the remaining blocks, or the remaining strips, sewn. All they need to be is hooked together. I'm going to leave you here today with this because this is a lot of information to cover. And in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to this last strip, which is going to be just more of what we did here. And then we're going to tackle sewing them all together. Now, I will warn you, that is the part of this that's going to be the most challenging. And if you can call all of your patience in working with that, and you get through that step, the rest of it's going to be easy. So, if you want to move forward and make all of your strips for your middle and center and middle rows, I would encourage you to do that. And like I said, next time I'm going to be back with the outer strip and then the assembly of all 5 strips into the one block. So I hope that this has been helpful to you in sewing this block or beginning to construct it. Remember that most quilting blocks are put together in a similar manner. They may not be strips, they may be smaller squares assembled into bigger squares, or rectangles assembled into larger squares, similar to our plain block that we had. But they're all a construction of geometric type shapes that come together to form the finished product. So if you take it one step at a time and master that step, then you move on to the next step and master that one. If you like this video, please be sure to give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. You might want to click that bell so that you get notified when we drop a new video. And remember, new videos on this project drop on Wednesdays. We do have other projects and we drop other videos on Friday. And you can check our playlist on YouTube to see all of the projects we've worked on so far. So if you're interested in catching up with one of those, or even watching it from the beginning, I would encourage you to do that. So for now, have a great week, and we'll see you next time when we finish up this block.